Grand Rising. Grand Rising. Start you off this Monday morning with a good topic. Some of my subscribers, they wanted me to do a part 2 on Illuminati. So we're going to get deep. But before I get started, I want to shout out again to Kingdom Creations for making the merchandise, making the shirts. And I want to start you off with, here, let me read something to you. This out the King James Bible. Hosea 4:6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of God, I will also forget thy children. And what it's talking about is how a people who reject knowledge, how they are cursed and their children are cursed. And how does this apply to the topic at hand? Okay, the topic at hand is really directed toward Black people, my people. You know what I mean? You know, I'm coming out of Detroit. You see a lot of different religions and belief systems, which really lack real knowledge. It's just all based on belief. And the word believe is the absence of knowledge. I was talking to a Muslim associate. I can't call him a friend because they don't behave in a friendly manner. They behave in a zealot, fanatical, cult type way. And they contacted me and they said, Assalamu alaikum. And I said, you couldn't say peace be unto you, good morning. You say Assalamu alaikum. Those are the only words you know in Arabic. You know, you want to dress like an Arab. You want to adopt Arab nationalism as if you have no knowledge of the Arabs' part in the slave trade. And yet you criticize Christians because you've traded one master for the second master. Which is interesting because a people who have no knowledge of self will continue to identify with any other culture that accepts them. And that's interesting that Black people will adopt Arabic culture, just like it's how Black people will adopt European culture and embrace it, and then wonder why things don't work for them. Real interesting. Let's talk about the Illuminati, which means enlightened or illuminated. You know, Galileo was one of the first illuminists that was, you know, condemned by the church because he created a telescope, or he had a telescope, and he watched the stars, and he seen that the earth was not the center of the universe as the Bible taught, but that the sun was actually the center of the universe and the earth revolved around the sun. And this contradicted the Bible, and it contradicted their theology. So he was labeled a criminal, and they persecuted him because of that. So other scientists and people from academia who looked at ancient scriptures and texts started to see that the allegories and the stories in the Bible had significant meanings that wasn't clearly visible to the layman eye. As I told you before, when you read the first 5 books of the Bible, it starts with Genesis, and Moses speaks on the earth was void and darkness moved upon the face of the deep. And God said, let there be light, and started creating things. He was talking about the elevation of the mind. And he was breaking away from the Amen priesthood under Pharaoh. So the history of the Bible is shrouded in mysticism. You know, it's shrouded in mysticism. The Quran that the Muslim follow was made from the Bible. When you study Islamic history, you will see that Prophet Muhammad was taught by Christians and Jews. And he never wrote a Quran because he never was writing at the time. He was forming an Arab nation. So they were going to war. And he did the same thing basically that Constantine had did, which was have a state religion. And that religion would unite the masses under nationalism. If you didn't believe in a state religion, you were considered a pagan or idol worshiper. So you get to present day in the age of intelligence where you can read books and you can go on the internet and you can research these things. You can actually look up the words and the etymology of the origin of words, which will unravel a lot of mysteries that you have as it relates to what your belief system may be. You can go from believing in something to actually knowing something with a little bit of study. So we're going to go and we're going to move it. We're going to move through history, and we're going to see a guy named Adam Weishaupt and international bankers like the Rothschilds and how they formed these secret societies and these secret groups, because these secret societies, secret groups were in opposition to the church. They was in opposition to religious dogma because they knew that the preachers and the priests that taught these things could only teach it in the manner that the state had ordained. They weren't even equipped to interpret it. When you look at a person like T.D. Jakes will tell you all these things about prosperity teachings and how tithing helps you. But when you read the Bible, Jesus said, don't tithe. And none of the disciples tithe. None of the disciples or Jesus felt like they need to give God a tenth of whatever they earned. That is directly tied to the Amen priesthood out of Egypt, where the religious people taxed the poor. You know what I mean? And worked alongside the state as a form of psychological control, psychological manipulation. You understand what I'm saying? To where somebody has you believing in something that you can't see, touch, or feel. And I know that a lot of people say, well, you can't see everything, you can't feel everything. But a lot of you don't even know that the moment that you die, your body loses 6 ounces. Loses 6 ounces. The moment you die, your body loses 6 ounces. And that's your breath in your soul. 6 ounces, that's your breath in your soul that leaves your body. And they knew that the original people were so connected to the planet through the iron in their body and the iron in their blood, the melanin in their skin that converts light and sound into energy. So no matter how mechanical the unmelanated people became, they couldn't tap into the spiritual aspect of this universe. So they continually had to create mechanics. A mechanical thing can be so minute, it can be suntan lotion. Why would a melanated person need suntan lotion to protect you from the sun when melanin converts light and sound into energy? But if you lack melanin, you're going to need something to protect you from that sun. That's a mechanical thing. I told you before in my text about how melanin costs so much more than gold on the stock market. So when we get to talking about the Illuminati, we're talking about intelligent people who understand the origin of scripture. They understand the origin of the text. I'm going to read you something else. This is called the Code of Hamurabi, the most complete and perfect extensive collection of Babylonian laws developed during the reign of Hammurabi, 1792, 1750 BCE. And these codes were the basis of the Ten Commandments. They were from Samaria. They were ancient texts about what people's conduct and behavior should be in society. And they are attributed to Moses. A lot of people, this Christians or even Muslims, they never want to identify the fact that Moses was raised in Egypt under the Egyptian mystery system. And a lot of things that Moses said were shrouded in these mysteries. They won't tell you that Jesus, the man whose real name is Yeshua, grew up most of his life living in Egypt and being taught in those systems before he ever came back to Palestine. So he taught in a lot of parables. But these parables have spiritual connotations. He told you don't be like the priests and the rabbis in the church who were white on the outside but rotten on the inside. And these secrets that are wrapped up in your doctrines and your religions is the basis for what you call Illuminati. This is why your church has a 501c3, and your church won't speak against abortion. Your church won't speak against the government. Your church won't speak against anything that contradicts the power structure. It wasn't created for that. It wasn't created to develop you spiritually. It was created to control your mind. And Illuminists were taught the mysteries and secrets of the Bible and the Quran and the origins of who you are. This is why you have Masons. Masons are Illuminists. When you see Masons and you see their symbols are all wrapped up in the building of King Solomon's temple, where you heard no hammers, you heard no nails, because they built a silent brotherhood. They built a ruling class. What does that mean, a ruling class? That means that the rest of us, uneducated and ignorant people, will be slaves to those who are enlightened and inducted into these secret societies. George Bush went to Yale and was a member of the Skull and Crossbones, which is a secret society in Masonry. 95% of your congressmen are Masons. Every president has been a Mason. So when we talk about Jay-Z and rappers, and those people are not in the Illuminati. Those people are tools of the Illuminati. They're put in positions to where they influence and sway the mentality of the masses. When you see their symbols and they show you symbols like this, that's a Baphomet symbol. That's a Satanist, which is something totally different than an Illuminist. We sit here and we don't look behind the veils, and we won't read to understand what's really going on. I asked my son one day, and he's grown, man. I asked my son, I said, do you know who Machiavelli is? He said, yeah, Machiavelli is Tupac. I said, that's not who Machiavelli is. This is a book, The Prince, by Niccolo Machiavelli. Is the basic structure of how to rule and govern people. And it gives you so many stories of history about how the Pope, his son, and cardinals in the Vatican manipulated and controlled the world through religious ideology. Even Constantine with the Red Cross on the shield and the Crusaders that fought in the Middle East, promoting religion over spirituality. So how does that affect us now in the age of intelligence? In the age of intelligence, where we have access to all this information, books, the computer, the internet, we still don't feel a need to research things on our own. And we say that there's some unseen power controlling and manipulating the events around us. Pythagoras created a theorem, the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A squared being the past, b squared being the present, and you square these two and you can predict the future. That's not something spooky. That's mathematics. If you know the past and study the past, and you can study and analyze what's going on in the present, then you can predict the future almost to a certainty. That's why they say the people who don't learn from the past are doomed to repeat it. When you look at the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, they control Illuminists because their overall agenda is one world government. One world government, where one ruling class and one working class, no middle class. You see, if you got to go to work every day to pay your bills, you're poor. No matter what you think, no matter what kind of car you drive, you got a car note, where you live, you pay property taxes. What do you really own? If you pay property taxes and you got to pay to use your car, what do you really own? Because anything that you own yourself cannot be taxed, regulated, or licensed. So you look that these ideologies keep you in a perpetual state of servitude and mental slavery. And anyone who comes to you and tries to free you from that will be crucified, will be condemned, will be considered anti-government, will be considered anti-religious, or so on and so on, because they're trying to free your mind. They're trying to free your mind from these systems that got a stranglehold on you. You believe that you can go to hell and burn forever and never burn up? Do you believe that? Do you believe that there's a God so cruel that he will burn you for eternity if you died at the age of 20? Who put that fear and that psychological restraint on you to where you fear going to a hell? And when you say somebody dies, they got their wings and they went to heaven. Where do you learn this? Who taught you these things? The people that taught you these things are the Illuminists. And I told you before, Illuminist or Illuminati only means an enlightened person or some person who's joined some type of secret society to where they know things about scripture and books and science and technology that the average person doesn't know. And they use it to enslave and control and manipulate people who are not in the know. If you go to work every day, when do you have time to read a book or see what's going on? While we were sleeping, let me show you something else. While we were sleeping, this is Vladimir Putin talking about the war.
Escalation on and off the Ukraine battlefield today. Heavy shelling and rocket attacks.
This is what Vladimir Putin is saying.
Region, eastern Ukraine, as well as another missile strike near the southern port city of Odessa. And this big step from the Kremlin. Russia says it will stop supplying gas to NATO nations Poland and Bulgaria. Just moments ago, the Russian President Vladimir Putin vowing any country interfering in Ukraine, Putin says, will be met with a, quote, lightning fast response from Russia.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. Vladimir Putin just said he's going to stop selling gas to Europe. Then he says that any nation aiding in Ukraine, he's going to attack. While your president just gave Ukraine $33 billion. We're on the brink of World War III. What do you think Vladimir Putin means when he says we'll be met with swift retaliation? Do you actually think Russia is bluffing? Russia won World War II. Russians are the ones that stopped Hitler, not the United States. Russia beat Hitler. The United States done lost in Vietnam and Korea and Afghanistan. The only people that they can beat and have power over is the black people trapped in America and other third world countries. Because this country was set up to be this worker, this big plantation for Europe. The first slaves that came to the shores of America came to America on the ship named Jesus of Lubbock. That's why when your ancestors said they wanted Jesus, they wanted a slave ship, they wanted to go home. They had no knowledge of this European ideology that you say that you believe in. All they knew is that they came on a slave ship named Jesus of Lubbock. Google it. Google it. They bought Africans from Africa on a ship named Jesus. So when you hear that your ancestors were singing about how they wanted Jesus, they were saying that they wanted to go home. They knew nothing about this European doctrine that King James had came up with, because no prophet ever came out of Europe. So how did King James get a version? And this is what I'm talking about when I talk about our people. If you know for a fact no prophet ever came out of Europe, then why do you believe in European ideology and take their interpretation for what scriptures mean? And then you talk about Illuminati. People are so proud to say, oh, my grandfather was a Mason, or I know this person that was a Mason. You know somebody who took and swore secrecy to the detriment of their own people? For real? You proud of that? You see how they go to fraternities and practice the Greek rituals and Phi Beta this and Psi Kappa this and whatever? And these black people, and they're proud of that, because they've been inducted into some special secret society that has handshakes and rituals. But yet we continue on in this ignorance while we watch our children being purged on a daily basis. The violence in our communities. And we still say Illuminati? Do you really want to know who the Illuminati is? It's some of y'all pastors. Some and almost all of your politicians. It's not no rapper who went through a Nori door and engaged in acts that he could be extorted for if it was made public. You're being controlled by people who have more information than you. Elon Musk. Elon Musk is an African American. He was born in South Africa during apartheid. So what does that tell you about what his mentality may be if he was born in South Africa under apartheid? Did you know that? Elon Musk was born in South Africa. He is a South African. He was born during the time when Mandela was being persecuted and all of that. And this is the man that just bought Twitter. When we talk about these things, it's going to be hard to talk about if you don't read a book or if you don't understand. And I started this conversation with the Muslim person. I'm not going to say their name because I know them personally, and they have a ridiculous mentality. So it was easy for them to be converted to anything. You could have converted them into being a kangaroo, to where they can actually have a doctrine that makes no sense. And then want to debate or argue with you about something that doesn't make any sense. That's how brainwashed. That's how brainwashed we is. And in the age of social media and the influencers, it only gets worse. And I'm gonna stop right here. And I want you to think on just some of the things that I said. Again, Grand Rising. Have a good week. Peace.